Thanks so much, Claire and Kate. Lovely to be here. Hello, everyone. Great to see you all. Yeah, we are the COMET team, Conservation Monitoring Effectiveness Techniques, as Kate mentioned. This is a project of the Conservation Measures Partnership, supported by the Moore Foundation. Many of you heard from us on an earlier webinar. Vanessa Rathbone on the team presented at the last webinar. Some of you heard from us at the rally in Valdivia, Chile. But for the purposes of today, in case you missed those presentations, we're going to reintroduce the project to you all very briefly and then share some updates with you. So our goals for today is to remind everyone what is COMET, what is the project, what are we trying to achieve. We want to share updates and progress to date. And then most importantly for all of you, we have some requests and very specific things that we're hoping to get from the community and also share how the results from COMET we hope will benefit all of you in your work. So again, just the team. So everybody's on this call. We're going to take turns speaking today. So it consists of Vanessa, myself, Gautam, and Xiao. So Xiao joined the project, I think since the last time you heard from us as our traditional knowledge consultant. And so you'll also be hearing from her. So the project team is part of the COMET project ecosystem, but there's a lot more to this project beyond us. So we have a steering committee made up by Kara Stevens, Will Beal, and David Wilkie. Some of them are also on this call today. We have an advisory group made up of a combination of monitoring experts from representing lots of different kinds of expertise, freshwater, terrestrial, marine, biodiversity, social sciences, and some people who are experts in traditional and indigenous knowledge or are themselves traditional and indigenous knowledge holders. The traditional knowledge consultancy and that aspect of the team is a very strong group, and people who have that expertise are also, we consider part of the COMET ecosystem because we've been consulting broadly within that community. Practitioners, including all of you, people who are doing conservation work and doing monitoring out in the world, and other end users, researchers, students, other people who may benefit from this work, funding organizations, and so forth. And I also just thought it might be useful to revisit sort of why this project, what was the sort of the motivation, why this project came to be. And it's really this idea of monitoring and its role within the conservation standards. So, of course, monitoring comes in very explicitly in the sort of planning phase when you're developing your monitoring plan. But of course, it also flows throughout the whole adaptive management cycle. So not just planning of the monitoring, but also implementing the monitoring, doing the actual data collection as you're implementing your project, using that information, so feeding that information back into decision making and management, sharing that information out with the broader community, and then using that information to reassess, so to sort of close that loop. So the importance of monitoring sort of at every step in this cycle, and then the recognition specifically by COMET that while the open standards provides a lot of guidance for all of these steps, there was sort of a gap in our guidance where we said, okay, you develop your theory of change, you identify your monitoring indicators, you've got this nice list of indicators, you develop a monitoring plan, and then what? So let's say you have identified an indicator related to needing to understand the, population trajectory of a wildlife population. Or let's say you are interested in measuring the impact of your work on human well-being in local communities. How do you actually do the monitoring? What are the methods? What's the best way of doing it? What would other experts tell you in terms of what works and doesn't work in monitoring? And so we're trying to fill that very specific gap, the sort of how to do the monitoring once you have developed your monitoring plan. So another way of saying that, the sort of why, the why behind COMET, that there wasn't this repository of publicly available sources for practical guidance on the most cost-effective ways for monitoring and evaluation. So our goal is to fill that, to develop a platform or a repository of industry standard, field-proven, cost-effective methods for monitoring, including traditional and Indigenous and local monitoring. So we really wanted to weave together um, what we consider sort of Western or scientific methods for monitoring, however you want to call those. I don't really love either of those terms, with Indigenous, local, traditional knowledge, because that's, of course, a critical source of information. And the idea that both of those kinds of ways of knowing and ways of going about understanding the environment and our role within it are very important and are acting, are really key to informing conservation practice. So how we're going about this is by working with all of you, including Indigenous and local communities, to understand both the challenges and successes of those monitoring efforts. And again, the traditional knowledge component is a really important part of this project. So we really wanted to also increase the understanding of the importance of traditional knowledge. So I'm going to use this term traditional knowledge to refer to Indigenous knowledge, local knowledge, all of that's woven together. But that there was little practical guidance for practitioners in how to respectfully engage with traditional, local, and Indigenous knowledge in monitoring, and vice versa, how to support traditional and local communities in engaging with practitioners. So our goal with this aspect of COMET was to develop guidance on best practices for doing that, including case studies. We've hired an expert, Xiao, to review and bring together existing experience across multiple geographies. So Xiao is going to share some of that work with you later. And we wouldn't be here if, we weren't also walking the walk, sharing with all of you our own theory of change. So ultimately, what we're hoping to achieve is to increase the access and use of effective monitoring methods in this community by creating our intermediate result of building a repository of proven area-based cost-effective methods for monitoring. And our strategy for doing that is going out and building that platform. With that, I'll hand it over to Vanessa to share some project updates. And Vanessa, just let me know when you want me to advance the slide.
Great, thanks. You can go to the next slide. So, like Rachel said, and I think maybe Kate or Claire had mentioned, we've been working on this project for a little over a year, but really started our methods collection in the last couple months. And we mostly, that methods collection has mostly consisted of desk research, which has included a literature review of existing methods that are peer reviewed and published, and then existing frameworks and guidance documentation that already people are using and are being utilized in monitoring, and existing tools and platforms. And then we've also been conducting a lot of one-on-one stakeholder, practitioner, expert interviews with people both in the natural and social science area and expertise. Next slide. So what we've really been looking for, we're calling it kind of our A to Z, is this is kind of the ideal method that we would be capturing, but we're looking for methods on how to monitor and analyze data. So not just like camera trapping is great for monitoring, but really how do you design a survey? How do you place cameras? How do you analyze data, visualize data, et cetera? And how does that inform you to make better decisions and adapt your projects? And then we're also looking for open source guidance and instructions. So again, that would help supplement how to do this monitoring and analyzing of data. So any webinars, documentation, existing data sets that people can adapt to their place-based conservation planning and projects. We're looking to include that and incorporate that as a package with the method to give to folks. And then in addition, tools, we're looking for different types of softwares and equipment that can help facilitate the use of the implementation of certain methods, and that as well as the collection and analysis of the data. So that could be anything from informing people of the best technologies to use, what types of software they're using to look at and visualize data, et cetera. So we're trying to wrap all of those things into what we're offering on the Comet repository so that when you actually look at a method, you'll be able to not just read about why it may work, but also how to implement survey design, how to go in the field and collect that data and then use it, analyze it, and use it to benefit your project. Next slide. So Rachel touched on this a little bit, but we have a certain set of criteria that we're measuring all of our methods that we're collecting under, and it's because we really want this to reduce barriers for people to actually start implementing monitoring at the onset of their project, throughout their project, and while they're looking at their final kind of goal indicators in their theories of change. So we want this criteria, our criteria for COMET is that these methods have been used multiple times and in multiple places, so that they're transferable, that they're also providing information that's worth the resources needed so that they provide more efficiency and effectiveness, and that they're also super practical. So they've been ground truth by people. They've, again, been used in multiple places, multiple times. Practitioners approve of these methods. So that's kind of one of the offerings that we think is different from Comet. We know there are a lot of existing tools and frameworks out there, and we're really trying to make the Comet repository consist of methods that have these hit and have these criteria checked for them. Next slide. So while we're collecting data based on those categories, that criteria, we've also developed a typology, a taxonomy for ourselves that has method categories. So things like habitat monitoring, ecosystem type, subtype categories, species, threats and pressures, human well-being, biocultural, and governance are all our subcategories and indicators, or sorry, excuse me, those are our main categories. And then within each of those categories, we're both looking at across terrestrial, freshwater, and marine, different types of those categories. And then even further down from that are the actual indicators. And this is just a small subset of our methods matrix that we're working off of. But this is kind of how we've been making sure that our site isn't just going to offer a lot of habitat monitoring and then not actually have much on species or human well-being or biocultural. So we're attempting to have methods that are representative of all of these different types of categories. Next. So within the desk research, again, we've done a literature review of, monitoring methods that have been peer reviewed. And again, this is something that, potentially AI could help with in the future. But what we see a lot of is that there aren't actual detailed descriptions of those methods in the field. And there's a lot of methodology for the analysis potentially, but less so on the actual monitoring and evaluation piece for the field. And what we're trying to do is, again, use the research and the interviews to help fill those gaps. So we've done that. We've also looked at, again, different frameworks and guidance that already exist. So there's the FOS, designing, monitoring, and evaluation approaches and learning. There's the IUCN monitoring and evaluation guidance and framework. These are just a couple of examples of the types of things that we're looking into. And then there's also a lot of tools and platforms that exist. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Wild Labs. They have a lot of group discussion boards and interaction for how to use specifically things like camera traps and those types of monitoring mechanisms. So that's kind of, we know those things exist, and we're definitely going to drive people to that where it's helpful, but also we're trying to really cultivate and curate a list of monitoring methods that people can have all their answers to and be able to, again, make them more place-based for their projects. And all of these will be linked in our notes when we share out the presentation. Next slide. We've also been conducting interviews, and these are one-on-one, semi-structured interviews with folks that have either offered their knowledge as practitioners or experts. And so Xiao will talk more about the traditional knowledge piece and those interviews. But so far, we've conducted around 25 semi-structured interviews. We'll probably do about 10 to 15 more in the next month or so. We're also, these interviewees are all from different backgrounds. We've actually been able to talk to folks that have expertise in species, in habitats, both in the reef and forest systems, wildlife and human health, well-being, hunting and threats experts, acoustic monitoring experts, and governance experts. And then we're also trying to make our have a diverse range of not only geographically, but also from the backgrounds of the people that we're interviewing. And so, just to give you some context, we have about 19 different institutions and communities that are represented so far. And across all continents, we've been able to meet with. And then just making a note that a lot of the people we've been interviewing are actually female. Next slide. Just quickly on the next two slides, these are just some examples of different types of methods. This is a human well-being method that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, especially if you're in the social science side of projects. The Basic Necessities Survey is monitoring human well-being. There's a few different assistance tools and resources that already exist. So this is the type of data that we're collecting. So the console size survey assistance, there's a few different types of basic necessity surveys that you can look at as frameworks to set up your basic necessity survey and then use it in conjunction with a tool like Kobo Toolbox. WCS also has a guide that was written in 2017 or 18 that also has a lot of guidance on how to do basic necessity surveys on the ground. And so that in conjunction with this tool, Kobo Toolbox, or the Kobo Toolbox Basic Necessities Survey, those two things can allow you to do really effective human well-being monitoring. You can go to the next slide. And another method that we just wanted to highlight is looking at coral reef ecosystem health and threats. So an example is looking at rapid bleaching assessment using the Mermaid data tool. And this tool does both helps you both collect, analyze, and visualize your coral ecosystem health and threats data. So an example of that is looking at bleaching assessments. And this is to empower scientists to and anyone practitioners that's in the field to be able to work with people in government and other officials and fishermen, et cetera, to improve the sustainability and long-term viability of their coastal systems. So this is another tool that has it has transferability, can be used. It can be used throughout many different types, ecosystem types, I guess, in terms of placement. And then it also has a lot of different types of methods that you can incorporate. It's a very helpful tool for that. So these are just a few examples of the types of things we'll be highlighting on the site. And we'll be following up at the end of this with kind of more of our gaps in and where we'd like to ask you guys all for more help on this project. But I'll pass it off to Xiao for the traditional knowledge piece.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. Well, thank you, Rachel, for handling the slides. So we can go to the next one. So as part of the COMET project, I've also been, the methods is the same. So I have also been conducting interviews and literature review of frameworks and guidance documents for conservation practitioners who wants to work with or who's in need of working with Indigenous peoples and local communities. So this work, the part of the guidance work is actually addressing a pretty critical gap in conservation practices. While we increasingly recognize the importance of IPLC partnership, there's still many practitioners lack of the clear guidance on how to engage ethically and effectively. So this has led us to develop a comprehensive approach with two main components. So first, we are creating guidance on how to properly engage with traditional knowledge holders through meaningful collaboration and also knowledge co-production. And second, we're documenting effective methods, both from traditional knowledge, monitoring techniques, also approaches used by experts working along Indigenous communities. Next slide. So this part of the research has identified three categories so far. This is not fixed yet. This is not the final product. I just wanted to put it here. So far there are three categories of frameworks that kind of form the foundation for ethical engagement. So first ones are the core data governance frameworks, including the OCAP principles, the ownership, control, access, and possession. So which is emerging in 1998 as First Nations asserted sovereignty over their data. And then follows the CARE principles from 2019, kind of complemented this and also complementing the FAIR principle by asking accessible to whom and for whose benefit. So those principles recognize that Indigenous data has historically been extracted without consent or benefit sharing. And second is the frameworks are rights-based international frameworks provide the legal foundation. So particularly the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples from 2007, especially Articles 19, 31, and 32, require free, prior, and informed consent for any activities affecting Indigenous territories or knowledge. So FPIC isn't really like checkbox that we say. It's more like an ongoing process from initial relationship building through this long-term monitoring. And third, there are quite a bit of the regional frameworks and the regional implementation. They vary significantly. So particularly in countries like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, they have developed frameworks, each reflect local context while addressing those above mentioned universal principles. However, I think there are significant gaps remain. We do lack the conservation specific protocols. So much of the existing guidance comes from social research contexts or health research contexts. And also funding cycles rarely accommodate the years needed for relationship building, and we need standardized frameworks that work across jurisdictions. Next slide, please. One of the frameworks that's particularly relevant for conservation is the two-eyed seeing approach. So Albert Marshall describes it as learning to see from one eye with the strengths of Indigenous knowledge and the other eye with the strengths of Western science, and to use both together for the benefit of all. So this isn't really about integration or validation. So it's more about maintaining the integrity of both knowledge systems while using them in parallel. So the diagram you see here on the slide represents a cyclical process where mutual research interests leads to long-term relationships, shared recognition, and co-scientific approaches that cycle back to research and development. Um, And there are a few conservation examples demonstrate this in practice. I'm not going to go through all of them. I listed, put a few here, but I want to share one in particular. So in the Slave River Delta, communities were concerned about upstream industrial impacts. Well, rather than scientists defining the research questions, over 100 participants co-developed indicators of ecosystem health. So Indigenous knowledge identified 22 indicators, such as changes in water movements over time, while Western science contributed 19 indicators, like turbidity measurements. So using Bayesian belief networks, they found Indigenous indicators actually often detected changes earlier than scientific instruments. Um, Next slide. So now turning to the methods themselves, so we have documented approaches used by both experts who work with IPLCs and Indigenous monitoring methods from traditional knowledge holders. So the experts working with Indigenous communities, they exploit more of the social science approach, including semi-structured interviews, focus groups, and participatory approaches, and some of the fairly innovative techniques such as photo voices that allow communities to document their own observations and concerns. While on the other hand, Indigenous monitoring methods, they draw on the, I would say, time-tested approaches, including traditional seasonal calendars that track environmental cycles, oral histories that preserve multi-generation observations, and also storytelling traditions that encode ecological knowledge in culturally meaningful ways. So those are some of the examples coming from our data collection. It's not comprehensive, it's not exhaustive here. And we have also begun to organize these diverse methods into more of the practical categories in line with what Vanessa just presented. So our indicators for the traditional knowledge aspect actually include sacred species monitoring, traditional fire management practices, or wildlife management systems, and maybe the plant flowering timing, and fruiting time observations. And we have also identified broader monitoring categories, such as the cultural keystone species and also the biocultural indicators. So I think I'll hand it back to either Rachel or Vanessa. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'll stop sharing here because Vanessa, if you're ready, I'll hand it over to you to do a quick preview of the website. Vanessa, you're muted. I don't know if you heard me.
I did. Sorry. I
That's
was
okay.
getting my screen ready. Here we
Great.
go.
I'll stop sharing then, and then you can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. Can folks see this?
Yep.
Great. So I'll just give you a quick preview. We've been working on the repository itself, the design and user experience, really making it extremely streamlined. And we're building this from scratch so that we can make it very fast loading. We assume some users might be looking at this in places that don't have great connectivity or might be in the field, et cetera. So we have both those we have that as a consideration, and we're showing the design as it would be on a desktop, and then also its responsive design on a mobile device. So that's what these are on the side. And we just wanted to give you guys a preview to give you sometimes it helps to visually see where these types of things are going to live and how we're starting to visualize them. And we'd love your thoughts and feedback. And we are about to start the development phase of the project in the next week or so. So I'll just give you a few of our main navigation pages so you can see what it looks like. This is our homepage. We have a little logo that we've been able to design. And we are trying to, again, make this a very simple site. So you'll see the main navigation includes the landing page for the monitoring methods. We have a whole few pages on the traditional knowledge component. We have an about us. We're also going to be potentially adding a description of our methods. So how kind of a lot of the things we covered in this presentation, our criteria, all of the types of research we did in order to get these methods. And then you as a user can have a profile, and that's where you can save different monitoring methods, refer back to them, organize them how you'd like, et cetera. So the main navigation here, again, all of this is placeholder. None of this is real copy or content. It's all just placeholder imagery and copy. So please keep that in mind. We'll have some sort of dashboard here that'll be updated with how many methods, contributors, and countries we're representing, and a little bit about just what COMET is. You've landed here. What are you doing here? What are you going to get from this experience? And then these are a few, just a preview of some of the monitoring methods that if you clicked through, it would take you to that main monitoring landing page. We also have the option for folks to be able to submit suggestions of methods if they're not seeing something, or if they just want to submit a project that they're working on that they think we need to highlight, resources, et cetera. You can submit suggestions here, and someone will then digest those in a timely fashion. And then obviously a footer to the page. That's our main navigation for the landing page. Our traditional knowledge page it's going to be a little bit of a different design, but the main components are you land here, it'll tell you a little bit about traditional knowledge and kind of a description of why why this is included, especially on the site, relevance in monitoring and preservation, and then some ideas and examples for folks that may not know the traditional knowledge applications. And then this will change to be directing you to a guidance document that Xiao will be putting together for how to engage with traditional knowledge holders and co-create with them in your conservation work. And then also it would lead you back to that monitoring methods page. And we're hoping to have a little video here that will be streaming, and it will just be a still image on your responsive design. But in the desktop view, it'll be about 10 or 15 seconds of different types of ways that traditional knowledge holders might be doing conservation and monitoring. So give a little bit more context and flavor for that. The About Us page is very, very simple. We're going to have just a description about the project, some of the partnerships, and then right now, this is all placeholder. There's one funder, the More Foundation is our funder. So we'll highlight that here. And then the real meat of the site is you'll land on a methods landing page. You'll see here, and apologies if some of this is really hard to read. It's hard to zoom in here. You'll land here, and again, a brief description of kind of here you are. You can search and sort however you'd like to find methods that hopefully will help you be able to monitor. And so these are all going to be collapsible sections, but all of the methods will be loaded here. And as you select, it will start to narrow down all of your methods so that, you might have 5, 10, 2 methods that match your criteria and your filters. It's just going to be a brief description here with a thumbnail and then some keywords that we'll have that will help us with this filtering feature. And then if you do set up a profile, you'll be able to favorite these, and they'll be stored for you to look at and reference later. And we imagine that as this repository builds and grows, that could be a really helpful feature for folks that want to come back and actually find the method that they had referred to before. Once you click into a method itself, it will drive you to, a detail page, one of the methods detail page. Again, this is a all example, but this is for BRUV, which is baited remote underwater video systems. It's a marine method for monitoring all sorts of things, but usually for identifying and looking at biomass and fish data and marine species. And here we have, because all of these methods are not all the same, obviously, and they don't all have a nice, neat summary and, all the things that maybe we are looking for in our aspirational methods. We want to keep this structured and standardized in a way that's user-friendly to the viewer. So right now we have just the summary. We're going to include things like limitations, some of those other relevant information. We will have links to images and videos if that's helpful. We'll also have a section that will be linking to frame all of the things that might be associated with that method. So webinars, tools, data sets, or at least skeletons for data sets. And that will all be on this page. And then other relevant methods from the repository, from the main repository, will show up and populate down here to give people easy access if they didn't see something and they want to click around to the next one, it'll also be accessible here. So those are the main navigation pages. There's a suggested methods page and then your profile page. We have a couple of different data points that we're talking about collecting from folks just so we can understand where our users are geographically. And that's the basic structure of the site so far. And again, this is still in development, so some things will change probably in the next few weeks, but would love your reactions. And if anyone, again, we'll ask about this later, but if people want to be more involved in this process, or at least get more updates on it, we're happy to be able to take your emails and share that out with you as well.
Great.
Yeah. I'll
Thanks,
stop sharing.
Vanessa. Okay, I'll go back to the slide deck, but I think actually you'll walk us through the what's to come and next steps slides as well. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Great.
sure. Great.
So what's next?
So we have upcoming the final products that we'll be producing from the project or the website. There will be a short report kind of synthesizing everything that we've been doing for the project. And then Xiao is producing the guidance document on traditional knowledge and monitoring, which will obviously be also featured on the site as well. The project timeline is to be all launched in March 2026. We are hoping to have a lot of this to be able to kind of finalize by the end of the year and into January, February, March. I'm seeing a lot of questions, but we'll get to those.
I think, yeah, there's been a great bunch of questions in the chat, but thanks to the team, and Gautam has actually been behind the scenes, and Vanessa responding to those in real time. And I'm also capturing all of those in the notes. So yeah, so if we're not getting to your
Yeah, we'll get
comments
to
in real
that.
time, yeah, we will.
We did want to highlight some gaps because you all are a great resource and community for us. And we wanted to acknowledge that there are, this is an ongoing process. We are trying as best we can to make sure that those methods are covering a wide range of those categories. But from Xiao's perspective, she is looking for anyone that can talk specifically about marine and fisheries work that are traditional knowledge holders. So if anyone has any contacts that they can think of and would be willing to have us talk to those folks or can put us in touch, that would be really helpful. We're also looking for offshore pelagic monitoring experts or practitioners. We have some good coastal data and some good coastal resources, but anything that's kind of offshore and more pelagic, we'd love to talk with those folks. Similarly, fish biomass monitoring is kind of always a challenge, and so if there are people that are doing that have some monitoring method that they feel is successful, and we'd love to hear that as well. Similarly, grasslands and rangeland, arid land monitoring, those are all places where we have some gaps. There is a little bit of threats monitoring that we've been able to capture through things like Mermaid and some other like smart data. There's a lot of threats data that's being captured that way, but yeah, we'd love to hear more about like actual on the ground threats that people are able to monitor. So if people have have resources for that, please let us know. There's also a lot of taxonomic gaps, as to be expected. And again, I think that's one of the parts of our monitoring categories that will continue to build the habitats and species monitoring. We will not have every habitat or species for this first launch of COMET, but we're trying our best to do as broad and as categorical as we can. So some of the gaps are insects, fungi, certain invertebrates. There are plants, but then again, there's a lot of if you it doesn't have to be something that you see on this page. If you think you have a good monitoring method or know of someone that's been really successful at monitoring, both on the traditional knowledge side and just in general, please, we'd love to hear from them, or if you can send us resources. We're very much looking to this community to help us fill in some of these gaps. So thank you. Next slide. Think I've said this a few times, but yes, if you are a practitioner or you are someone that has expertise or knowledge of a method, please share. We'd love that. And also with the website, we are doing a little bit of modeling and trying to train models for the AI integration and LLM potential of Comet 2.0. If there is a Comet 2.0. So if people are interested in being experts for training LLM models or AI or want to get involved in that, we're putting together a group to see it basically be validating through a few different AI bots, a bunch of different monitoring questions. So if that's something that's interesting to you, please let me know and I will send you information on that. I think the next slide is just thank you all again.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And
Thank you, Comet team. And I think we have some time for more questions. I know there were lots of great questions in the chat that have been answered as we've been going along, but if anyone else would like to ask the team any questions, now would be a great time.
and I wasn't able to totally keep up with the chat. Were there any chat questions that we didn't get to?
I think you got to most of them. There's one from Lawrence. Do methods have to be published in peer-reviewed journals to be included?
Yeah, great question. We originally had hoped that that would be one of the criteria, but we've gone back and forth a bit about it because if the method meets our other criteria, in terms of having been used more than once in more than one place, having a practitioner or more than one practitioner tell us this really works, it's effective, it gives us information that's useful, it's worth the money or the human resources required. And critically, there is open source guidance that exists that someone could pick up and use and apply the method. To me, those other criteria are as important or more important than it's been peer reviewed. Obviously, peer review gives a method a different kind of legitimacy, but to me, the practitioner approval legitimacy, I don't know, team, if you would answer that differently. And then, especially when it comes to the traditional knowledge and Indigenous component of this work, again, yeah, peer review is one kind of legitimacy, but maybe not the only kind. So I don't know, Vanessa or Xiao or Gautam, if you want to weigh in on this question.
That's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. I actually typed it as you were saying it, but yeah, I think the traditional knowledge part is what I was going to add is, by their nature, those tend not to be peer reviewed. So yeah, preferred in some ways, but not mandatory.
Great. Any other final questions? All right.
Maybe I'll just end with one closing comment that Vanessa already described this, but just to be really clear and maybe to manage expectations a little bit, the COMET platform won't have every monitoring method out there. It won't be a comprehensive platform. Our goal is to cast a really wide net and try to get monitoring methods from as many of those categories that Vanessa and Xiao described as possible, but then to feed them through a filter of is the method, again, practitioner approved? Has it been used more than once in more than one place? And is there guidance that somebody could pick up and learn this method and apply it without, going back and getting a PhD and having a university or partner? Um, and so once we go through those filters, the methods that make it onto the Comet platform will be much fewer than the full set of potential methods for monitoring. And so some of you just may, anyway, but we're happy to take any and all suggestions that you have. But just to maybe manage expectations a little bit, that's really what we're going for. We're going for this curated set of methods. Um, and even that, it won't be comprehensive because it's a version 1.0, and we hope to add to it over time. So I think the team already talked about that, but I just wanted to make that clear because you may make suggestions for methods that don't then end up on the platform someday. And it's just because, again, we're trying to find those A to Z guidance, where somebody has written down, how do you actually do this? Or somebody has documented or provided a video. How do you do this start to finish, this methodology?
Great. Well, thank you, Comet team, and congratulations. It's super exciting. And I can tell just from the enthusiasm and the comments that the whole CMP community is really excited about this work. So congratulations, and we look forward to seeing the website as it develops.